Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC TV. I'm quite excited about this episode as we have the guys from Liquidware Labs with us to show off their ProfileUnity solution. We just recently did a podcast with Jason Smith over at Liquidware, and we said, well, you know what, we got to seeing is believing. So, this is what we're going to do today: is we're going to show it to you, or they're going to show it to you, and I'm going to learn, and hopefully, you guys will learn too. So on that note, let's no further rambling from me. Let's just dive straight into it. We have John McDonald here with us. John, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having us on your show, Doug. It's a pleasure.
Hey, well, thank you. So real quick, as always, tell us who are you and what do you do over at Liquidware Labs?
Absolutely. My name is John McDonald. I came to Liquidware Labs through the Intrigue Systems acquisition. I was the chief architect of the ProfileUnity solution. And currently, I head up the support division and the QA division for LWO.
Awesome. Okay, so just real briefly, tell us about the product. Just sort of real briefly.
Sure, absolutely. So ProfileUnity is what we would consider to be a full-blown user profile environment management system. We have two different types of modules in the system. We have what we refer to as a provisioning module, and that's where we can define settings from an administrator perspective and push them to the client. And we also have a portability module, which allows us to take user customizations and make those follow the user around and or make them available anywhere the user logs on to the corporate network.
Well, perfect. Okay, enough about all that stuff. Let's get into the demo. That's why we're here. Guys, if you want to learn more about what they're doing from a listening perspective, definitely jump over to DABCC Radio and, search Liquidware Labs or ProfileUnity, and it'll be right there. And or just check the show notes for where you downloaded this on DABCC TV, and you'll find a link within there. But now we're going to get into the demo. So, John, have at it. What are you going to show us?
So I've pre-configured ProfileUnity in the environment today, and we're going to show you the punchline first, or rather what the user sees. And we're going to come back around after you see the punchline, and we'll show you behind the scenes what the administrator sees and how to set the product up. So in this environment, I have two virtual machines. First virtual machine is an XP machine. This will be our version 1 profile. I'll go ahead and log in here. And at log on and log off, you'll see the ProfileUnity splash screens. The product runs during log on and log off. And as a user, we're going to customize this environment now. We're going to first of all set a wallpaper. We'll go ahead and put one in just for Doug today. Wallpaper's giving me a little trouble. Let's try our standard one.
Oh, I don't get my own wallpaper. That's my fault.
Sorry, Doug. Something was wrong with that file.
It's my fault. I send you crappy files.
Instead of Doug's now, and we've customized the color to make it obvious that we've changed it. Now we're also going to go ahead and open up Firefox. We'll give Doug his plug on this one. So we'll navigate to dabcc.com.
Yay!
And while we're here, we're going to go ahead and add a bookmark. We'll also open up a second tab, and we will visit our website. We'll leave these tabs up, and we'll just exit out of Firefox, tell it to save and quit. We're also going to create a document on the desktop here. We'll say, hello, Doug. And we'll fill in some random text inside of this document here. It's really some gibberish, something to give us for content. We'll save this. Let's see, next up we're going to open up our Outlook client. We're going to configure this to talk to our Exchange server. I do want to point out that we can actually provision this setting, meaning that when the user logs in, it'll automatically happen from the provisioning side of ProfileUnity. We are doing it by hand so that we can showcase our migration feature set today. And there is our Outlook up and running. And likewise, we're also going to go underneath Options, and we'll add a signature. And we'll just say, hello, DABCC viewers. Okay, great. So we've sufficiently customized the environment to give you a demo of how we're going to pull the settings across. We're now going to log off. And again, you'll see ProfileUnity execute just like it did during the log-on process. At this point, it is saving off our customizations. It takes just a second, and we are ready to go ahead and log back into a Windows 7 machine. So same user account. Difference here, obviously, is that we're now logging into Windows 7, and this is our version 2 profile. You'll see in just a matter of a few seconds during the log-on process here, ProfileUnity is going to run. It's going to pull across all of our customizations. At this point, it's really restoring our customizations into this environment. And obviously, our background color and image are available here. Our Hello Doug text documents on the desktop. And if we open this up, you can see the random text we put inside of this. Likewise, if we open up our Firefox web browser, our Liquidware Labs tab is here. And if we go underneath this other tab, we have our DABCC tab up and running still. Likewise, underneath bookmarks, we have our DABCC bookmark available here we could go back to also. And last but not least, if we open up our Outlook profile, there it is. Now, I do want to point out, as this is opening, you're going to see first run dialog boxes. And the reason behind this is that there's no smoke and mirrors in this demo. This really is the first time this user's ever run Outlook 2007. Now, on subsequent logins, all the answers that I'm clicking to the questions here will be saved off, and they'll be played back. But again, the reason this is the first time of first run dialog boxes showing up is that not only have we migrated from XP to Windows 2007, we've also migrated from Office 2003 to Office 2007. The first run dialog boxes aside, you can see the mail profile is ready for use, as well as if we say Actions, New Mail Message, there's our Hello DABCC Viewers signature that we created on the XP side. So we've successfully gone from a version 1 to a version 2 profile. We can do this at will. It really doesn't matter to us. We like to say anything from Windows 2000 forward, regardless of presentation method, whether that's FAT, SYN, streamed, or VDI, we're happy to make the user customizations available on those platforms. So that is the user side. We also want to dive in now and show you what the administrator side of this product looks like. So I'm going to go to our corporate website, just liquidwarelabs.com, and there's a download link in the top navigation bar. This is actually the page that I'm on right now, our download page. The first thing I want to point out is that our solution ships in 2 different versions. We have a virtual appliance version, which, as the name virtual appliance, I'm sure applies to everyone listening and seeing this. We're going to support ESX and Citrix Zen Server with this virtual appliance. So if you have those environments set up, you're welcome to grab the virtual appliance, and it's actually a hardened Red Hat Linux appliance that's ready to run. On the other side of the coin, we also have a standalone installer, and that's available a little bit further down in our page here towards the bottom. The standalone version is actually a Windows installer. So if you want to install our product on top of an existing Windows system, such as an XP laptop, for example, you can certainly do that as well. It's completely up to you. When you get through the installation process, the end result is going to be the same either way, so it's really a personal choice what's going to work better for your environment. Today, I'm actually going to be demoing the virtual appliance version, and all the documentation that you need to get up and running is actually on this page as well. There are a couple of simple steps required to get the virtual appliance up and running after you import the OVF or the XVA file. For example, you need to go to a console, give it an IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, DNS servers. But from that point forward, everything's going to be adminned through our web-based interface. That's what's on the screen right now in front of you. You can see in our product drop-down box here, we have our complete product suite. We have Stratosphere Fit, we have Stratosphere UX, as well as what we're going to be looking at today, our ProfileUnity solution. The last section here is called Administration, and that's actually what we're going to log into first. The Administration section is a common area where we have things like the agents for the software, and that's what we're going to log in now to pick up. So now we're in the Admin section of the virtual appliance. I'm going to click on the ProfileUnity Agents tab, and then the Agent Software tab. And there's a small executable here. We're going to download this executable. I'm just going to save it to my desktop. And this little executable is going to install what we refer to as our zero-touch agent. Now, our zero-touch agent is a pretty neat piece of technology. It actually is a client agent. However, the neat part about it is that it doesn't get installed on your endpoints. We're going to place the zero-touch agent on a UNC path, and all of the endpoints are going to pick this zero-touch agent up across the network from the UNC path. So it's really a zero-touch, meaning there's no install on your endpoint, even though it is a small agent. And to run this executable, which is the installer, we just double-click it. Everyone would expect it's a standard Windows installer package. We're just going to say Next to the dialog box, and it's prompting us for the UNC path we wish to extract the agent to. Now, we target by default the net log on share on your domain controllers, and the reasoning behind this is twofold. Since the net log on share is replicated throughout the enterprise by default, number one, it prevents us from having a single point of failure, and number two, it allows us to scale without limits. If this is not possible in your environment, maybe you're doing a proof of concept, or maybe you're a desktop guy that doesn't have write access to the domain controllers, it's not a hard requirement. All that we have to have is a UNC path that's writable by the administrator and can be read by the endpoints. But for today's demo, I'm going to go ahead and take the default and say install. And really, when we do the install, we're actually not installing software. We're not installing services. We're not actually performing a software install. We're really extracting a total of 4 files. In fact, if you felt more comfortable about it, since we are targeting a domain controller, you could actually fill in /temp, for example, extract the ProfileUnity folder that's going to come out of the installation program locally, and then copy it up by hand. What we're looking at right now is actually the ProfileUnity folder on my NetLog on share. I do want to point out also that we do have our own namespace, meaning we do have a subfolder here, so we're not going to damage anything that pre-exists in your NetLog on share. And inside of this folder, I told you we extract a total of 4 files. Well, my demo environment has a total of 6 files. The extra 2 are the ones I've already created to make the demo work from the user perspective first, and I'll come back to those and tell you what they are in just a minute. The 4 files that are here, the client exe is our zero-touch agent. You can see it's just over 3 megabytes total in size. We use the KISS principle extensively throughout our software. We believe keeping it simple allows it to perform faster, as well as be easier to administer for both ourselves from technical support as well as our customers' setup and installation requirements. The remaining 3 files are VBS files or VB script files. It's a log on, log off, and startup respectively. And these are how we integrate the software stack into the customer's network. So I've got my domain controller up here. I'm going to show you the group policy that I've built to integrate our software. Got one on my lab OU called ProfileUnity Demo. If we edit this, there's a total of 3 settings inside of this group policy. The first setting is a startup script. We simply call the WScript interpreter and pass in the UNC path to the startup.vbs file. The second setting inside of our group policy is a logon script. We simply call the WScript interpreter and pass in the logon.vbs UNC path from our zero-touch agent. And last but not least, we have a log-off script. We simply pass in, again, the WScript interpreter and the log-off VBS UNC path from our zero-touch agent. And that's it. That's all that's required to integrate ProfileUnity into either your network or your customer's network. It's simply a UNC path that the admin can write to and that the users can read from, and simply extract our agent to that, and then create the group policy with the 3 settings with the 3 VBS files, one respectively for log on, log off, and startup. The remaining 2 files that are in our share path here for our zero-touch agent are the ProfileUnity.lic file. This is our license file. To pick this up, I'm going to go back into our virtual appliance management console, click the license key link right below the exe where we downloaded the installer, and the license key will generate the ProfileUnity.lic file. We simply save this to the UNC path, and we're done with the licensing. The remaining file in our NetLog on share is the default INI. This is actually the configuration. I mentioned that we are using the NetLog on share by default because it replicates throughout the enterprise, and this allows us to scale without limits as well as prevent a single point of failure. So how we do this is that our client exe, our agent, doesn't actually contact the management console for its configuration, but instead it looks through the directory it's executed from for INI files. The INI files are actually the endpoint instruction files that tell our zero-touch agent how to process. So from this point forward, we're essentially going to use our management console to generate these INI files. And to do this, I'm going to log out of the admin section. I'm going to log back into the ProfileUnity section. You can see I have a configuration here called default. Hopefully you're drawing the conclusion in your mind that this default configuration in ProfileUnity's management console is going to end up being this default INI file in the UNC path. After we make our changes, we simply click the download button, and from that point forward, we're going to save the INI file off for our agent to execute. So now that you understand the architecture of the product, I want to dive in a little deeper and show you how I built today's demo environment. This default container that I've already created, I'm going to go ahead and edit this, and immediately you'll see all of our configuration modules load on the left-hand side of the screen. Everything from drive mappings to inventory to mapping profiles to printers. You can probably read the list a lot faster than I could read it to you. And again, we have 2 different types of modules. The first type is a provisioning module, and that's where we actually push settings to the client from the administrator's perspective. For example, we could force a drive mapping during user logon. And the other type of module is our portability settings. And portability is where we allow the user to find changes to follow them around the network. Portability is really our roaming profile replacement solution. So today's demo environment consisted of, number one, a drive mapping. I simply mapped drive H to a UNC path. We used here what we refer to as a macro, the user ID. You can use environment variables if you prefer. So, for example, we could have used %username %. Our context-sensitive help, which is available by clicking on the question mark of any topic that you're on, will bring up a list of the macros as well. So you click on the View Macros link at the top right corner of the help topic. I guess the point here is that we don't expect you to remember all of our dynamic variables, so we have them listed out in the help system so you can very quickly get to them if you prefer to use our variables, or our macros rather, instead of environment variables. But again, both versions work. You're welcome to use our macros or the environment variables. So the drive mapping out of the way, the next thing we did was a folder redirection setup. And at this point in the demo walkthrough, I do want to point out that both from a technical and a philosophical perspective, we believe that a user profile contains two different types of data. The first type of data is what we call user-authored data. This is actually your intellectual property. It's what your users create with the software you give them. Examples of this would be Word documents, MP3 files. And it's very important to separate the user-authored data out of the user profile. And there's a couple of reasons behind this. Probably the primary reason for most of the people viewing this or listening to this is that we need to get the intellectual property out of the profile and onto a file share so that it can be properly backed up and restored. Now, the second reason behind separating this data out is that in today's increasingly heterogeneous environment where other platforms like the Macs and Linux are creeping into the enterprise, it's really hard to share this intellectual property among heterogeneous systems if it's trapped inside of a Windows user profile. So the way that we get the data out of the profile is through folder redirections. Again, this is not just our best practice. Microsoft also recommends using these. And we do have a couple of tricks up our sleeve here. In particular, not only can we copy or move existing data in a folder redirection. I'll show you the drop down here. So we can do a copy or a move, much like Microsoft and other third-party competitors can do. We can also do a synchronize to new location. This is one of our unique features. We can even do a bandwidth limit. Let's say, for example, we want to synchronize and we want to do it with 256 kilobits per second of my network pipe. Now, probably the easiest way to explain this is to walk you through what happens. So in this example, we're going to redirect the My Documents folder, which we'll assume is on the local C drive, to the network path, which is connected to the drive H we mapped to a UNC path in the previous module. So let's say a user has 500 megabytes or a gigabyte of data in the local My Documents directory, and they log on with this configuration with synchronized setup. So what's going to happen is that ProfileUnity is going to start a background synchronization process, and we're going to limit the bandwidth used to 256 kilobits per second. Now, if they have 500 megs or a gigabyte of data, it's going to take quite a while to get the data synchronized with this low bandwidth limit attack. Let's say it takes maybe a week or 2 weeks with log-on, log-off events from the users taking place. Our synchronization engine is actually intelligent, and once we synchronize the file from the local machine to the network path, we're not going to move the data bits again. So if the file hasn't changed, we're going to leave it alone. We'll know it's synchronized. On the other hand, if a file changes, it's already been synchronized, it only changes a small amount. We're only going to transfer the blocks that have changed. We're not going to transfer the entire file again. So for example, if you have a 50 megabyte file, the user makes 1 megabyte of changes, we're just going to transfer the megabyte of changes to keep it synchronized. Once the background synchronization has completed, at the next logon, we're going to redirect the folder, and the user will begin working off of the redirected path. And the takeaway from the user's perspective is that their files have been migrated to a network path that can be properly managed by the administrator, and they've had zero impact during the process. Takeaway from the administrator side is that they've been able to harvest existing files into a best practices scenario by getting them onto a redirected folder without impacting their users and without impacting their network, their file servers, or their storage area network, because we've been able to do this with a bandwidth limit during the synchronization process. All right, so I'll quickly review one more time what we've done. 1 drive mapping, 2 folder redirections, and the last things we turned on for today's demo were what we refer to as our portability settings. And this is our roaming profile replacement module. It is a two-step setup process. Right now you're looking at step 2, so I'm going to flip screens and show you step 1. Step 1 is the portability management tab at the top of our product nav bar. On the screen right now are what we refer to as our built-in or predefined rule sets. These ship with the product, and they're intended to get you up and running quickly. You can modify our rule sets, you can delete our rule sets, you can certainly create your own. I want to show you what's inside of one of these rule sets, and I do want you to bear in mind that the general theory, once again, of our portability is that during the log-off process, we back up, and during the log-on process, we restore. So essentially what we're going to be doing with these rule sets is defining what we care about, or what we want to back up and what we want to restore. The Mapping Profiles rule set, which is built in. There's a couple different operations we can do inside of one of these. For the registry, we can merge, replace, and exclude. We can do this on trees, keys, and values. And likewise, for the file system, we can merge, replace, and exclude. We can do this on the folders that make up the user profile, from application data to cookies to my desktop. The list goes on. You can probably read it once again faster than I can read it to you. For this example Mapping Profiles rule set, we're going to replace the tree in the registry defined by HKey current user, software, Microsoft, Windows NT, current version, Windows messaging subsystem. Now I know this rule set's a mouthful, and I almost always show this one during the demos. The takeaway here is that this one's been written for you. There's nothing to do other than to turn it on, so please don't be intimidated. These are actually fairly easy to write, and I'll show you next what it takes to write one. We'll say new rule set. Let's just say we create a rule set for the Adobe applications. Typically all that's required is to grab the software vendor branch, in this case Adobe, from the registry, and likewise to grab the application data vendor branch, in this case once again Adobe, from the file system. And just that fast, we've written a rule set that will capture the personalization settings for the Adobe apps when the user logs on and logs off. Now, a lot of people come back at this point in the demo and will tell me, that's great, we can write our own rule sets, but we have 500, 1,000, 2,000 applications, and there's no way we're going to write this many rule sets. If you're in this category, that's fine. You certainly don't have to write rule sets if you don't want to. We have a built-in rule set called third-party applications. And what this rule set does is it grabs the entire software tree out of the registry, with the exception of the Microsoft branch. By turning this rule set on, it's built in one shot, you're going to capture 90 to 95% of all third-party all third-party application data from the registry. Likewise, we have an application data built-in rule set. This one's going to grab the entire application data off the file system. And again, in one shot, turning this rule set on that's built in, you're going to capture 90 to 95% of all application file system data. So the takeaway is twofold. If you want to write your own rule sets, it gives you greater control over what you move. Maybe you have a Citrix farm that has a financial application on it, and that's all that it's running. You can write a rule set for that financial application. That's only the data will move around for that Citrix farm. On the other hand, maybe you have thousands of applications. You don't want to write rule sets at all. You can turn on the catch-all rule sets. Today's demo actually used the catch-all rule sets. So even if you do turn those on, our performance is still going to be very fast during the log on and log off, and make the users very happy, regardless of whether you write your own or whether you actually use our catch-alls that are built in. As I mentioned, this is a two-step process. This was step one. Step two is to come back into configuration, edit our default container we've been using, and go underneath portability settings. This is the second step, or where we activate the rule sets. I'm just going to edit one of the ones I've already turned on here. You can see the drop-down has all the rule sets we were just looking at a moment ago, including that Adobe rule set that we built together during today's demo. And all that's required to activate a rule set is to fill in a UNC path. We like to target the user's home directory, and there's two reasons behind this. Or it's really one reason, which is ease of setup, but the two sub-reasons are, number one, it almost always exists in every enterprise, and number two, it almost always has the appropriate permissions already set on it. So that sort of eventually results in an easier setup, both for proof of concept and production. This is not a requirement. If you want to use a different UNC path, you can. All that's required that the user has write access to their section of the UNC path. And likewise, we like to use a folder of our own on the end of this. In this case, we use _ProfileUnity. You could call it Fred. It really doesn't matter to us. The point of this is to get a folder of our own so that we know where our product's writing to for troubleshooting purposes. So for today's demo, I turned on third-party applications and application data. Those are the catch-alls. I also turned on mapping profiles and Windows appearance. And that was it. One drive mapping, 2 folder redirections, and 4 of our built-in rule sets, and that made the demo environment today. I also would like to show you the user's home directory. This is the user account that we've been using for today's demo. And there is a desktop folder. And I'll show you inside of this. There's the Hello Doug text document from the desktop. Again, we've redirected and gotten the intellectual property out of the base profile and put that on the network path. We also have a ProfileUnity folder. Inside of this folder are 4 7-zip files. Each one of these 7-zip files corresponds to one of the rule sets that we've turned on. In fact, the UID, which I'll highlight now back in the management console, you'll see this actually becomes the file name of the files that are created in the UNC path. There's the same UID over here. Now, I do want to point out that for today's demo, we're using a whopping 1.31 megabytes of disk space to store the personalization settings for this user. There's nothing proprietary about the storage format we're using either. The 7-zip compression algorithm is actually open source. You can download the source code if you so choose to do so by going to Google and searching for 7-zip. Likewise, and probably more interesting to you, you can download and install a freeware extraction utility, which I've loaded on this machine. And if I open up one of these 7-zip files, you'll see that inside of it is a reg dump. If we open up the reg dump, it honestly is a reg file. You can play it back by hand if you so choose to do so. There is no data jail. It's going to lock you into using our product here. It's an open storage format. You can get your files back out at any time. Likewise, if we open up our larger file here, this is going to be our application data. We drill down into this. You'll see we can also extract files and folders by hand if we so choose or need to do so to get our files and data back out. Other features that our product has, we can generate summary reports. So click on the summary link here. We'll generate a PDF or a text document if you prefer of your configuration. Our configuration for today's demo is fairly simple. You can imagine as these build in complexity, these reports become more and more important. The bookmark links build as you turn on modules. Again, our configuration is simple, so we only have a few modules enabled. Here's our portability settings. Likewise, here's our drive mapping. And likewise, here are our folder redirections from today's demonstration environment. We also have a very robust filtering system built in. And filters allow us to have fine-grained control over how our software executes. So for example, we could create a DABCC filter. We can say the group membership has to be domain users. We can add that. We can say our TCP IP address needs to begin with 172.16.7, for example. Add that. Likewise, we can say the OU for our computer needs to contain OU equals sales. We can add this. Hopefully you're getting the idea here that you can build up the rules to your heart's content for what the filter is going to check for. You can also choose machine class, operating system version, as well as whether the connection is the LAN or Microsoft's built-in VPN client. And once we have our filter created, we can save it. And now back within our configuration, I'll just edit our default container again and go back to our drive mapping. Now for our drive H, instead of a global settings filter, which means apply to everyone, we can choose the DABCC filter, and now drive H is only going to be mapped if the DABCC filter returns true. Likewise, we can also create multiple containers. And I'll show you that. We can create a couple very quickly here. And now you can see I have the default container as well as new configuration and new configuration 1. On the very first page of a container, there's a checkbox that says require group membership for execution. Maybe we want to rename this container. We'll call this UK1 for United Kingdom 1. And we can say only execute the settings in this container if you're a member of the United Kingdom group. We can save this. And now our container is limited to a group check. So basically there's two ways to limit execution. The first is very fine-grained with a filter like we did for the drive mapping. The second is you can limit the entire container by a group membership check for all the settings that are inside of that container. I'm going to go back in now to our default container. I'm going to show you one more of our modules. We have an inventory module that's built in. Our inventory allows us to do one of two things. We can upload XML files, which isn't very entertaining. It literally does what it says. You specify a UNC path, and we will generate inventory files in XML format and push them up to the UNC path. Probably what's more interesting, from my perspective at least, is the reporting server that's built in. To use it, you simply hit it in the drop-down, fills in the details, you say OK. We save it into the database. Now to activate this configuration, we come back out to the top level. We click the download link. This is where we generate the INI file. And we're just going to save this INI file off into the UNC path we extracted our agent to. Again, this is how we activate our product. It's also how we scale without bounds and prevent single point of failures. We're just going to replace the one we have. I'm going to switch to the inventory tab in our software. You can see there's no inventory settings here yet. Now we're going to log back into our Windows 7 machine. You'll see during the logon process, again, ProfileUnity is going to execute as we expect. Not only are we doing our administration settings, such as the drive H and the folder redirections and playing back the user-defined settings, we've also harvested an inventory off this machine during logon. If we refresh our inventory tab, you can see the inventory for the machine is now available in the web UI. We click on details. You can see the processor type, the amount of memory, the display resolution, the OS version, as well as probably what's most interesting is a list of all the applications from the applet for software installation in the control panel. And our UI currently doesn't permit you to do this. However, we do have ODBC access. And what I'm talking about you can't do right now through the web UI is query, for example, show me all the machines that have Office 2007. However, with that ODBC access, you could use Excel, Crystal Reports, Access, SQL command line, any other tool you wanted to use to harvest data out. And you could ask questions like I just gave you the example of show me all the machines with Office 2007. Several of our customers have deployed this in advance of doing any type of migration, and it gives them a very quick inventory check from their existing systems. I do want to point out this is not meant to replace Microsoft System Configuration Manager or any third-party very robust inventory system. It's meant to be a quick win that requires zero-agent deployment and allows you to harvest the application so you can very quickly see what's out there in the field. Also, if you choose to write your own portability management rule set, this allows you to know what applications are out there so you know what rule sets you need to write. And that does conclude my version of today's demo, and we're going to turn things back over to Doug now.
Wow, that was phenomenal. That was phenomenal, John. I just sort of, what are you going to show me? And wow, that was great. That was a great demo and pretty slick product also. But it was really good job. So I really, really appreciate that. If somebody else enjoyed it as much as I did, what do they need to do to learn more?
Absolutely. They can certainly get in contact with any of us at the Liquidware Labs team. We're happy to assist in any way from helping them with a proof of concept setup to giving them just a one-on-one demo or any training they may need to get this integrated into their environment.
That answers my question, but at the same time, it didn't. How do they get a hold of the Liquidware Labs team? I guess visit the website. That would be liquidwarelabs.com, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I misunderstood your question. You were absolutely correct.
So, well, no, you answered the question. It's just we needed more. So unlike your demo where that was awesome. That was a really good demo. So I listened to a lot of these. So I really, really enjoyed that. On that note, is anything else? I'm going to give you the last word before we just go ahead and call this episode.
We appreciate you taking your time to watch the demo today. And again, as Doug mentioned, you can visit our corporate website at liquidwarelabs.com. And we're happy to assist in any way we can. Just reach out to us and let us know what your problems are, and we'll come up with a solution for your needs. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you again, John. And definitely guys out there listening, if you want to learn more, if you're, listen to the podcasts, or maybe you're new to the podcast, go ahead and jump over to www.dabcc.com/radio. Do a quick search for Liquidware, and there'll come up just a recent podcast we did with Jason Smith about ProfileUnity. You can download that and listen to it as you're commuting to and from work or working out or whenever you listen to those type of material, podcasts, audiobooks, things like that. I think you'll enjoy it. So on that note, thank you guys.